this obesity drug?
We found that people who took medication lost more weight compared with those who took part in a behavioural program, but the weight regain was much more rapid after medication compared with people who had taken part in behavioural programs. So after medication, people were estimated to return to their baseline weight after 1.7 years, whereas people who had finished a behavioural program weren't estimated to return to baseline until just under 4 years. As I said, the amount of weight lost is predictive of how fast people regain the weight. So we thought that perhaps this difference in weight regain could be explained by the fact that people just lost more weight by taking medication. So we did a further analysis where we broke down the amount of weight lost into averages of 5, 10, and 15 kilograms. And we found that, as I said before, more weight loss equals faster weight regain, but we saw consistently faster weight regain with medication, regardless of how much weight was lost.
Wes Streeting, back in the back end, I think, of 2024, talked about giving obese unemployed workers this obesity drug, signed some sort of private deal with, I think it was an American pharmaceutical company. I can't remember the name of it actually, but it was a huge contract. It was like 270 odd million pounds, I believe. You may know the correct figure, Bob, but I mean, there's all sorts of problems, isn't there, with regard to this? I was looking at something in, I think it was The Guardian, relatively recently, saying that the effectiveness of this drug, whilst it may be that people have lost weight whilst taking the drug, when they come off the drug, they very quickly regain the weight. I don't know what the issues are with regard to side effects, but I mean, before we show this video, Bob, what's your overall view about Wes Streeting's, I'm going to say proposition, the implementation of Wes Streeting's idea about giving, it's almost kind of a forced medication to unemployed workers. It seems a bit sort of a dystopian to me. I don't know what you think, Bob.
Yeah, I think it's unethical. It's immoral what he was suggesting, which was either you take this shot to get into employment or you lose your benefits. I suspect there's an implied threat there. And it would appeal to maybe people who have a very superficial understanding, and it also sort of reinforces the undeserving sick narrative. That's the undercurrent here.
Yeah.
That people are lazy and feckless and don't want to work. But we have an obesity problem because of the food people are eating, and food that is designed to be addictive, and food that is cheap and plentiful and heavily advertised. So people, they're not actually making a choice because the addictive nature of these, engineered ultra-processed foods keeps you coming back. So it's a bit like a drug dealer. They get you hooked on the junk, which destroys your health. So he's putting all the onus on the individual. And why is he supporting this with public money? Well, who benefits? It's the big pharma companies and the pharmacy chains like Boots and Asda and all these other people. They're crowding out, even in pharmacy and drug distribution. They're crowding out the small independent pharmacists, and these big players are taking over. And this is a huge money spinner for the pharmacists. And the other aspect of this is now this was a huge opportunity to take the doctor out of the equation.
Yeah.
So now you have equated the pharmacist to the level of the doctor, and it's assumed they'll have the same ethical framework and same caution. But my experience is none of that is true. So we've had people with a body mass index of 25 or 26 being offered these jabs. As long as they pay, they will get the jab. There's not much monitoring. God knows how much counseling there is in terms of side effects. I doubt it very much that they go into the side effects. And
yeah,
there are some quite worrying side effects. So they might not be very common, but there is a risk of sudden blindness with these jabs. There's a risk of permanent gastric paralysis, so your stomach stops contracting. There's a risk of permanent loss of appetite. A more common side effect is a risk of pancreatitis, which is a life-threatening inflammation of your pancreas.
Wow.
So people have a perception that this is a risk-free drug and all the celebrities are doing it. But the chickens are slowly coming home to roost as the lawsuits start to mount in America.
Mm.
And Wes Streeting wanted a bit of public credibility. Oh, look, the NHS is going to fund this.
Yeah.
But behind it lies the ability for major corporations to profiteer. And he's allowing pharmacists who don't have the same level of due diligence, pharmacy chains who are employing unqualified people to dole out these injections. So it's a repetition of what we're seeing in A&E departments, the downskilling, the lack of broad knowledge and awareness. Now, if I'm going to give a drug to my patient, I have a few things that make me a bit cautious. First of all, I've seen these wonder drugs come and go over a 30-year career. We only find out the downside several years later, so there's always a lag. Secondly, people who think that a drug will wondrously improve their health are extremely naive. And what we see with the people who are looking for an easy way out, their diets are atrocious, their lifestyle is atrocious. So you take a drug that knocks off your appetite for a while, but you're still eating junk food, right? So your risk of diabetes and chronic disease remains the same, might be slightly reduced because you've lost the weight, but unless your diet and lifestyle improve, this is only a temporary fix. Yeah. So it would have been much better had they funded these jabs in well-run clinics with experienced staff who are very selective about people who get them, making sure that people who are committed to a lifestyle change get them, and they are properly monitored. Now, the other reason stopping me dishing these out is I'm conscious that if there's a side effect, these are still my patients. I have to deal with them when they come back with their blindness or other problems, right? And can I hand on heart say that I did this in their best interest? So I will apply a greater degree of caution before I just prescribe.
Yeah.
But that is not the same with a pharmacy, which you don't have a long-term relationship with. And pharmacies have a huge conflict of interest because they will recommend a drug that they then go on to profit from. And Wes Streeting doesn't care about conflict of interest, doesn't care about good use of public money, and doesn't care, in fact, is actively eroding the place of a doctor and a GP as an essential part of good, safe community healthcare.
And it's a typical neoliberal response as well, isn't it, Bob? Where they're kind of individualizing the, people's difficulties. I mean, I was watching a documentary, I don't know, a few weeks back now, looking at how obesity has really increased substantially, particularly amongst working class communities. And they compared it with the same kind of cohorts within the same strata within society from 30, 40, 50 years ago. We didn't have an obesity. I mean, obviously some people that were obese, but we didn't have an obesity crisis in the way in which we have today. And then they put things down to there were differences in terms of people's working patterns and stuff like that, and so certainly that has played a part. The role of new technology and how that's led to a more sedentary sort of work-life situation for lots of people. But of course, so you have that technological impact, but also the point I think you make, Bob, about the food industry, where they are really basically, as you say, making people become addicted to this cheap shit food. When you've got very little money, I mean, this government, is continuing to bear down on social security for people. Many people are in work as well, are on very kind of like low wages, or in precarious employment. So they're not in a situation where they can necessarily afford a more healthy diet in that sense. And so, rather than having a kind of a wide-ranging collective response to this obesity crisis, they're coming up with this kind of quick fix idea that benefits, surprise, surprise, some big pharma outfit that's getting, you know, multi-hundreds of millions of pounds contracts paid for from the public purse. It's another scandal, isn't it, Bob?
Yes, it's huge. So, you know, the reasons behind the obesity epidemic stem from the change in nutritional guidance back in the 70s. They started to demonize natural fats like butter and cheese. We were brainwashed that cholesterol is like the devil. And in its place came sugar and carbohydrates. Sugar and carbohydrates is a major driver of obesity, because sugar and carbohydrates, the body turns them into fat. And they're also highly addictive. They give your brain a dopamine hit. That means you feel full up for a very short period of time, and then you're craving the same sort of food again. So the food supply, the advice that was given, advertising, the deliberate engineering of these foods to be hyper palatable, and the supermarkets have these as a loss leader, and they pile it high, sell it cheap, and we are where we are now. And the benefits are, of course, to the drug companies, the food companies, obviously, and it's not harmful to the politicians to have a disconnected, sick, depressed, unengaged, and maybe mentally slowed down population, because it allows them to get away with more and more. Now, if you just look at, it's my perception, I haven't read any evidence on this, but my memory of people back in the 70s where they were far more bolshy, and they knew when they were getting screwed, right?
Yeah.
But now everybody's quite passive and falls for these sort of identity politics, divide and rule tactics, and they fail to see what is driving a lot of this. They can't actually join the dots so easily. And unfortunately, we know that if your brain is lacking particularly certain amino acids and fatty acids, you can't think so well. And we also know that fasting actually improves your cognitive function. Throughout history and in the religions, when people wanted to think over a very complex problem or get closer to God, what did they do? They fasted. Right? And what the body does is turns your body fat stores into ketones, and ketones is a super fuel for the brain.
Right.
But if you constantly pump it full of sugar, you're not going to get the same results.
No, indeed. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.